Hi everybody, it's RMSpeltz Family Farm today with dandelion jelly. So it's that time of year for dandelions, so we all went out and picked some pails of them. We did not actually pluck out the petals the day of, so we put them in the fridge. That's why they're all a bit closed. So it does make it a bit harder to pull out the petals, I would say, but not too bad. And we're just gonna pluck out all the yellow. Now some green does get in it. That'll be okay. But we just try to get the petals, and not all the petals because then you definitely get green. And you can see we did get some green, but we just needed 2 cups actually, of petals. And we have the water. I did need 4 cups of water. And we're going to start off by making the dandelion tea, I call it. It's just where you put boiling water over the petals and steep them. We're going to bring this water to a boil. The first part of the jelly is just making this tea because it has to sit for 24 hours. So you might want to think about that a little bit ahead. And I put all my petals into a jar because I have to put it into a fridge. Now my water is boiling, and I'm going to pour it on top of them. Once I pour it on top of them, they do float, so you can mix it up. I mean, it does say try not to mix it up and just let it sit, but they did float, so I just helped it push them down a little bit, because you can see the top ones are just sitting there dry. And when you put the water on at first, it gives a really funny smell. It didn't seem like dandelions to me. I put them in the jar, and I'm going to put them in the fridge overnight. Here I am the next day. I just took them out of the fridge. They kind of turned like a darker color, and I'm going to strain them out and just have the dandelion juice, which isn't actually as yellow as I thought it would be. It kind of is just like a really light yellow tint to it. And it wasn't actually quite 4 cups of dandelion tea anymore because of all the petals kind of soak some up. So I just added a little bit of water. It needed only a little bit, like a couple tablespoons. Because in the end you needed 4 cups. I have my tea, my pectin, and my lemon juice. The recipe called for liquid pectin, but we have the conversion for the dry pectin to liquid. And I'm going to just put my tea into the pot, and I'm going to put the pectin and lemon juice with it. There's also sugar I didn't have on my ingredients, but it calls for that as well to make the pectin work. So I'm going to put the pectin in. The conversion is 6 tablespoons for 1 pouch of liquid pectin. And I'm just going to go get a knife so I can scrape it flat to get the right amount of pectin. Once I put the pectin in, I wanted to mix it at the same time, but since I didn't have enough hands, we were just going to put it in and then mix it after. It did kind of clump up as it sat there, so I had troubles kind of trying to get the pectin to mix in properly, but it worked. I'm going to put 6 tablespoons in, and then my lemon juice. Call for 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And you can't see in the pot, but it is piling up in a little mountain and just getting really clumpy. So I'm later going to have to mix that because I couldn't be mixing it at the same time. I didn't have enough help. Which was fine. I think it was fine. Just took a little longer to break it all up. I'm going to put in my lemon juice. I had to dry out the tablespoon measure. Wanted everything to be clean just so I wouldn't mess up anything. 2. And then we're going to put it on the stove and bring it to a boil. I have it on high right now, and I'm just going to try to unclump the pectin because it's just kind of floating around in there. So I got a big spoon and I'm trying to crush it up. I brought it to a boil. It got really frothy, and I'm going to put in the sugar. It called for 4 cups of sugar. And I was running low on sugar, so couldn't mix it at the same time. My same problem I had with the pectin. But that's okay, because the sugar didn't clump up the same. And I went to get another bag of sugar, so Tabitha's actually going to mix it for me in a minute. And once it gets to a boil, we're going to put it on a timer for 2 minutes. The last cup of sugar, mix it up. We started the timer because it's starting to boil, besides that we're mixing it. The top got a little bit frothy and it's starting to gel up, as you can see. It's looking good, and it smells a lot like honey right now. It's really cool because it's just dandelions, but it doesn't have any dandelion smell or the smell that it had when you were making the tea. It smells like a really strong honey. We got our jars ready at the same time with our lids and rings. Boil for 2 minutes and we're going to bring it over. That's me starting the timer for 2 minutes. I started off without the funnel. I don't know why I forgot it, but I'm just going to work around the froth at first for the most part. Try not to put the froth in the jars and try to get to a 1/4 inch headspace, which is like the right amount of headspace. Some of them I left a little bit lower when I look at it, but it worked out. My little sisters can get me the funnel because it just wasn't working. There we go. Start pouring into the jars. And at the same time, we went and got the water boiling in the canner outside. Julia's going to help me. She wipes off the tops because at the first part, it's not quite so hot through the jars, so you can still kind of touch the jars and put on the rings. If I waited till the end, then the jars are really hot and hard to hold. So she just wipes the top so that it will seal properly because I'm not that clean and I usually get a lot on the edges. The first couple jars didn't have as much froth, but as I went, I started picking up more froth just because it was hard to get to the bottom. This batch made 6 jars of this jelly, and it was really fun. I'd say it was really easy to make. Probably the hardest part was just getting the petals out of the dandelions. I would suggest doing that without putting them in the fridge. It just made it so much harder when they all closed up. But it wasn't impossible, and it worked just fine. There's a bit of froth in that one. I'll scoop that out later though. And getting to the end. My water should be boiling outside, so I can just take these out, put them out there. All in all, it took me, after waiting obviously 24 hours for the dandelion tea, about 45 minutes to make this, just between the boiling and getting the jars and water ready. So it didn't take me too long, and it actually was very simple. My water is boiling outside, so we can go ahead and bring the jars out. It did make 6 jars and a little bit more, so I have a jar of froth in the house. It's more like a quarter of a jar, so it made a little bit more than 6 jars. I'm going to place all these in here and then put them in. And this is for 10 minutes, this in the hot water bath. Try to arrange them so they're all balanced out in there. Don't want any to tip over or anything. I will actually probably turn it down a little bit just because it's boiling so rapidly. Don't want anything to overboil and hurt my jars. I'm going to set these into the water and start my timer. Timer for 10 minutes. The 10 minutes is up. I'm going to take them out and just set them on a hot pad on the floor so they can cool down. When I took out the first one, I did tip it a little, and I noticed that might have been too much. Don't want to affect the seal or just tip it in general. So for the rest of them, I'm just going to leave some of that water on top and blot it off with a towel after. They are quite yellow. I figured they would pale a little bit more like how the tea looked at the beginning, but they turned a really nice deep yellow compared to what I thought it would be at first. They're really pretty looking. Last jar. I'm going to set these down and let them cool off. Don't want to touch them, so make sure they seal properly, but they look really good. Making dandelion jelly was probably one of the easier jellies I've made. Sometimes it's harder to make jelly just because you have to strain out the seeds and whatever, but because this is just a flour jelly, it didn't take very much. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.